Myers.
Here.
Ms. Shudek.
Here.
Mr. Arthur.
Here.
Mr. Kazire.
Present.
Mr. LaFurla.
Present. Now please join me in a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And any discussion?
Nice agenda.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the agenda's been approved. Next, we have approval of the minutes from the work session and the business meeting of December 13th, 2022. Is there a motion?
I can move to approve the minutes of the work session and the workshop business meeting of December 13th, 2022 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
And any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And the minutes have been approved. Next is public participation. I don't see any members of the public here, so I'm assuming we don't have anyone who requested to speak tonight. So we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Murillo.
Thank you, Mr. LaFurla. Tonight for our student achievement presentation, Dr. Matthews is going to join us to present on our MTSS. We have been doing this work for about 3 years now. We spent a couple of years really developing what does our multi-tiered systems of support look like. And then this year we are having, I think, 4 schools that are early implementers. And so I'm really excited about the work. I really appreciate the board's support and the state's support around going slow to go fast and being able to do this correctly, work out the kinks, and next year roll it out district-wide. Because really this is just really naming and framing the work we do and ensuring that we're staying aligned. So Dr. Matthews, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo, and good evening again to all of you. I really appreciate the opportunity to provide this update. As I mentioned in August when I provided the first MTSS report this school year, this is truly a collaborative effort amongst multiple teams. So I get the pleasure of presenting to you, but our student and family services and school leadership are heavily involved in this and part of our district MTSS team to make sure that we are really all focused on this work because it's so important to ensuring the success of all of our students. Because MTSS is all about supporting and responding to students' academic, behavioral, and social emotional needs, this work really aligns to Goal 1, improving academic achievement, but also that Goal 4, ensuring each student is supported and connected in meaningful ways. So that is the focus of the presentation this evening. As we get in, I wanted to remind you all of what MTSS is, and we have really worked to even reframe our own definition within our guide. So MTSS is that multi-tiered system of support designed to meet the academic, social, emotional, and behavioral needs of all learners. And I really do think this graphic represents it nicely because you can see on those outer leaves, those areas, but then it really talks about that universal layer, that tier that every student needs and receives to ensure that they're getting that equitable access to the learning opportunities. But then we have the targeted and intensive tiers as well. So when a student's needs aren't met by that universal tier alone, and they have additional needs for support or enrichment to extend their learning, those are offered based on those individual student needs. So that is really MTSS in a nutshell. It is getting every student what they need in all 3 of those areas to be successful. When I presented on this topic in August, I shared information with you about the updated guide that the district MTSS team, and that's a mouthful, so I'm going to call that the DMT going forward, but it's our district MTSS team, really collaborated to develop. And the purpose of that guide is to provide those clear processes and to ensure consistent implementation throughout the district. So they have something to reference and go back to as a team to make sure they're working through the process in a similar way. And we knew before we rolled this out district-wide, we really wanted to get this in the hands of some of our school leaders so they could engage their teachers and their teams in this process to see what's working well, because when you put something on paper, you think it looks really good, and in practice it might look different. So we have 4 schools who are early implementers. Those are Carter Lake, Longfellow, Kern, and Abraham Lincoln. And I just want to publicly acknowledge the hard work that they've put into being early implementers, because they're being risk takers. They're trying something new for the first time. They're pioneering this, and they're giving us lots of great feedback so that it goes more smoothly, even so for the district as a whole. And when we brought this to them at a principal meeting and asked, we would really like to have some early implementers at each level, who might be interested, where might this be a good fit, and we considered, where we had some changes in leadership within the schools too. So that's how we arrived at those 4 schools being those early implementers. And what that really means is they're using this guide, they're digging into the work, they're getting their teams together, and then they're providing us that feedback as a district team. Each early implementer has a member from the DMT who is assigned to that school to support them through this process, along with their chief of schools, either Mr. Schultz or Ms. Comine, depending on their level. And it's really just a collaborative effort in making sure that the processes are going smoothly, we're responding and making those updates to the guide as needed. Those designated team members come back to our DMT meetings and provide us that feedback, and then we wrap our arms around it again, and we make those adjustments and tweaks as needed based on the feedback that we're receiving from the people on the ground doing the work in the schools. In each of those early implementing schools, they have established building MTSS teams and action teams. And those building MTSS teams are really meeting weekly, and they're digging into data provided in the Student Success Platform, and that's the platform the Department of Ed has transitioned to. So this is new for them, and it's new for us. And it is giving us kind of a snapshot of the universal data related to MTSS. So we're able to see their universal screening data for their academics. We're able to see, sort that by who's getting D's and F's, who's getting C's and better, who's attending school regularly, who has a lot of office referrals and might have some behavioral needs. And it's really helping the building team to be able to sort through and sift through that data and then bring that to the action team where the real planning begins. So as those action teams get together, they're meeting consistently, they're utilizing the 4 critical questions of a PLC. So what do students need to learn and be able to do? How will we know when they have? What will we do when they don't? And what will we do if they already know? So really kind of thinking about that universal layer, what they all need to know and be able to do, and then those responses when they do or they don't. They're looking at data points weekly for their classroom instruction and making action plans within that week. So if a student missed a skill that was just taught, they can respond. If a student already has a concept, they can make a plan to extend that within the classroom on the spot. But then every 4 to 6 weeks, they're looking more globally. And that's where that building team member who's had that global view of the data from the Student Success Platform can come in and help guide a conversation around some trends and some themes and say, this group of 3 students is really struggling on this standard in our math instruction, but we've also noticed that they're not attending school regularly. So we have to get to the root cause of the issue. Is it because they haven't been in class to get the instruction, or is it because they're missing a lagging skill with that academic piece? So they're able to have those conversations and treat the cause rather than just the symptoms. So that's been very helpful. Again, they're monitoring that progress over time using that Student Success Platform. What's great about that is it's a one-stop shop. Every teacher who works with that student has access to that information. So they can see the plan, they can see the progress the student is making on that plan. So whether you're an elective teacher, a core teacher, a counselor, a special education teacher, we're all looking at the same action plans and the same progress that students are making on those plans. So again, we're getting that feedback from the early implementers routinely, and that is through the assigned district member or the chief of schools. And they're bringing that back, and they have been really great about just making sure that they are trying to work the process with fidelity as outlined in the guide, but when something's not working, they're comfortable with saying, we found a challenge with this, or the student success platform isn't quite comfortable for me yet. Can you show me how to navigate that, or how to pull this piece of data, or I'm struggling with the schedule a little bit. Where can I find a time in my schedule to meet with this group of students? So they're just working through some of those logistical issues. We've gotten great feedback around that and making those adjustments accordingly. We also thought it was important for those team members to get together quarterly. So the school leaders of those 4 early implementing schools are able to come together, and they're reviewing their own progress, and they're reflecting on where are we in our implementation? How are things going? What does this look like at your school? How might I try something in my school? So that's been really positive too. And we've had the opportunity for our cross-town middle school and high school to also engage. So even though they weren't early implementers, they were new leaders in their schools this year, they're still picking up pieces of that and trying some new things that will just make their implementation that much smoother next year. So some of the feedback we've gotten, really positive points around the clarity in the process. Again, as Dr. Murillo said, this is just the way of the work. This is what we need to be doing for all students, but it spells out some processes and some guidelines. It puts some time parameters around it. It helps pinpoint what data we should be looking at and reviewing, and how frequently that should be happening, and what those teams and structures look like. And it's really helped to simplify that process for them. The principals have reported that they are just so tremendously proud of the teachers and the focused and intentional planning that's occurring based on the data that they're receiving, and that is allowing them to have more timely response to student needs. It's kind of helping them think outside the box around how to respond to that data, getting those action teams together and having that building team member who's already sifted through that data, and they can just really be efficient with that time. I did mention we are still working through some scheduling and timing. As you can imagine, at elementary, middle school, and high school, schedules look very different for teachers and for students. So those are feedback that we're getting from each of those principals on when do we meet, or when do we pull groups, or how does this fit within our structure and our framework. So we have really been problem solving and brainstorming around that, and the principals and teachers have great ideas around that too. So that's what's been great, that we can really roll that out next year knowing they've tried this and it's working. They found a way to fit this into their schedules. And then again, the logistics of using the student success platform, we did do training on that. It was new for everybody. We wanted everybody to be in the system this year, but it's something new that we're learning, and we're still able to give the Department of Education feedback as well on, could you make it do this? Because it's a data warehouse and they can make those adjustments on the back end. And so that's been positive to be able to work with them and make it usable and user-friendly. So as we continue our early implementation for the remainder of this school year, we are also, of course, planning for our district-wide implementation, which will occur in the 2023-24 school year. So we are preparing our professional development planning for that, and that will start with an overview for all principals in June. We know it's really important that this work aligns directly with their school improvement plan, so it's working in tandem with that, and not in conflict. And so that will occur at that same time when we typically get all of our administrators together and they begin really diving into what their school improvement plan for the following school year will look like. Following that, there will be a summer academy for all teachers in August, and so this will be our early bird session, the session that everybody attends, whether they attend during summer academy or one of their contract days leading up to the start of the school year. So everybody has that strong foundation and that starting point to get off the ground and get started. And then we know that this will take continued support all year. So every school next year will have somebody from the DMT assigned to their school to support, in addition to our school leadership team supporting them. So again, this has been a very heavy lift, and I just can't thank our early implementers enough, because I'm just so proud of the work that they're doing and them digging in and doing this. It's been very positive for our students, and I'm just so appreciative of them being able to be front runners and give us the feedback they have so we can make improvements and make this rollout smooth for next year. So with that, what questions do you have?
Any questions?
Just had one. Since all of the information is data that's part of tracking the students, has there been thought on developing a dashboard for the school, the classroom, for the, so that the administrator in the school can just look at their dashboard and say, hey, we've got so many students that are, so many students that are missing 10% or more of classes, or so many students that are getting less than a C. Is that something that's part of the being able to visualize what's going on in their school, so that it's just one screen, and then those that have permissions be able to drill down and see the more detailed information regarding a school, regarding a classroom, regarding a student then?
Yes, I should have brought some visuals of that. That is what the Student Success Platform does. So it has your first screen on there, shows 3 bars, and one's for academics, one's for behavior, and one's for attendance. And it shows you just at a glance. Your green is those, achieving that 95% or higher in your attendance. And then you have your yellows and then your reds. So it shows you that just at a glance for grades, for attendance, for behavior. And then exactly what you're saying, you can drill down by grade level, by a teacher. You can sort by different subgroups that way.
I apologize. I remember
Oh.
now when you said that, we did see that screen that in August, I think you brought it to. That's right.
It's a great question. I should have brought some of those visuals back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. At this time, we're going to move into our informational presentations, and we have 2 this evening. We are going to start with Mr. Stile. John will be presenting this evening on our cybersecurity report. It's such a timely report considering everything that's going on around us in the world. And then we'll follow that up with Mr. Wilson introducing the audit report. So, Mr. Stiles, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo. I'm really excited tonight to get to bring to the school board a cybersecurity update for the Council Bluffs Schools. According to the FBI, malicious cyber activities threaten public safety and our national and economic security. Schools face a myriad of challenges, hazards, and threats. In addition to the natural hazards, the technology hazards, and the biological hazards, they now have to prepare for human-caused cyber threats. These incidents can be accidental or deliberate and disrupt education and critical operations, expose sensitive personally identifiable information of students, teachers, staff, and lead to high recovery costs. Some of the cyber threats that we face here in our school district: a data breach, which is a leak or spill of sensitive, protected, or confidential data from a secure to an unsecure environment. Denial of service. A network is deliberately overloaded with requests. Spoofing and/or phishing. The act of sending an email falsely claiming to be a legitimate organization in an attempt to deceive the recipient or divulging or giving access to protected systems. Malware. Illicit software that damages or disables devices, servers, and/or networks. Ransomware, another form of malware in which the perpetrator encrypts files, then demands payment to ransom to regain access to those files. District Goal 3, improve and maintain learning facilities. Part of that goal is all classrooms will be equipped with updated technology. The district is dedicated to ensuring classroom technology is available through robust cybersecurity policies, procedures, and dedicated IT staff. But it goes beyond even our classrooms. We also want to make sure that our financial and our HR systems are protected as well. So our commitment to the security, a data breach, we have a modern and up-to-date firewall with VPN capability. We have a denial of service. We're using a COC service that gives us DDoS protection. This service is actually engaged each and every day, and we see real results every day. Malware and ransomware. We are using EDR and EMS endpoint protection. In addition, we use the paid version of Google Workspace. It provides a lot more security for our district. Backup and recovery. We use the Unitrends all-in-one backup solution. Threat alerts. This is a key component that we in the technology department stay informed of day-to-day threats. There are multiple that I use throughout the year, but my two favorite are the Multi-State Informational Sharing and Analysis Center, aka MS-ISAC, and then in the state of Iowa, the Office of the Chief Information Officer provides a weekly update that is very helpful for school districts. Last August, you as a board allowed us to subscribe to the Passport Security Check service. This service provides checks on social engineering of end users. That's a phishing campaign, compliance verification, and awareness. It also looks at workstation and protection. That includes our servers. It also delves into the VPNs, the firewall ports, and the traffic management. So, right off the bat, last November, we did a phishing campaign, and this is the first that we've really done since my tenure. And so what you have up here are two of the emails that we're phishing to see if they could get users to click. Now, as you can imagine, it was not the one on the left that most went for. But I think we really want a white peach tea lemonade here in the district.
I keep clicking on it. It doesn't.
So, as of note, nobody on the executive cabinet did click on any of these. But here's something of interest. The campaign that we subscribed to would not come into the district because Google Workspace stopped it. We actually had to lower the security from that end group in order to get past that. Google has commissioned the Forrester Consulting Group and found that there is a 95% reduction in phishing attempts to the end user when using Google Workspace paid version. And that's important, the paid version, because they have a free version that does not offer those levels. And that also means the incidents that took place, it was a 98% reduction in the IT staff in order to repair the damage that was done from those. Now, this is what you probably wanted to know. There was over 6,000 phishing emails sent. There were 328 users that actually clicked on the email itself. Of those 328, there were 6 individuals that actually exchanged data. Now, that sounds a little bit concerning. However, I will tell you that I have talked with other school districts, other UEN districts, other MOAC districts. Their first time around, they had well over 50%. We did really well here in Council Bluffs Schools. To think that we only had 6 users that gave out any information, and it was mainly the lemonade, and so it was name and email. So, but only 328, that was amazing to me. And I really do mean that. That was amazing. Our staff does a wonderful job. And this was sent to all staff. What does all staff mean? That's anywhere from support staff, teaching staff, administrators, you name it. So that's really good. Now, if you were one of the lucky 328, and you did, you got to go through a Phishing 101 course. I have confirmed all 328 have went through the course. It's about a 5 to 10 minute course depending on how quickly you read and how you answer. Now, that being said, that was the first phishing campaign. In the future, there will be different levels. If you happen to, if you're one of those 328 and then you happen to fall victim in the future, there are more courseware that you have to do, and that's part of this, the passport security checks. Device endpoint protection. Endpoint detection and response, EDR, provides threat protection in real time. And what does that mean? Threat protection in real time means it's on the workstation or the server, and it's not going to allow malware to execute or to change the code. Now, we haven't mentioned Chromebooks, but I want you to kind of think about this. These two services are they're not necessary on a Chromebook. Why? Because a Chromebook actually has, when it's booting up, it has two operating systems. One is its core operating system, and one is the actual operating system, your environment. If for whatever reason something has changed the code on the operating core, the machine reboots, and it makes an exact copy of the original, and you're off and running again. That's essentially for PCs what EDR is doing. The enterprise management server, this is invaluable. And what this is doing for our endpoint servers and PCs is it allows us, each day we get reports of who has their operating system up to date, virus protection up to date, who has maybe it's a program that's out of date, or who has something going on with their virus protection that's not working. This report goes to myself, but it also has real time for our help desk team. So when something happens and there's a user that something's going wrong, we can disperse a technician immediately. And then finally on this triad, we have a virtual private network, and this ensures that all of our off-site users get the same level of protection, network protection, that we offer in district. So this is the Gardner report, and what you will see up in the upper right quadrant, those are firewalls that we are associated with. So we are doing really well. But what I want you to take from this slide is those particular companies weren't companies that we used in the past. However, they have moved into the highly effective firewalls. So we as a district, we as a technology team have to constantly be monitoring and making sure that we're staying on the current firewall systems that will help us. Now this was just a moment in time. This was a 24-hour cycle where we, on our firewall, what we protected. If you'll notice on that very top line, you'll see, it might be a little hard to see, but almost 4 million attempts to find open ports or go around our firewall. That's in a 24-hour window. Think what it's like in a 40-hour work week, a month, a year. It's astronomical. The other thing that I will point out, and again, it's a little hard to read, you will see that internally we had users try to go to Snapchat and some variation. That particular Snapchat had malware that day. And then down here, a little bit farther, you will see, it's been in the news a lot, TikTok, same thing. You will see that we had 3,665 users that were trying to use a service on TikTok. It was blocked.
John, and this is from end of last week, right?
Correct.
Is this what we see? I apologize for just
Oh, no.
asking questions, but is this what we see on an average on a daily basis, or is this an increase?
Oh, no, this is the
The
norm.
average? Okay.
Yeah. So what would happen if it wasn't the norm? I get alerts, and then our network team gets alerts that like, hey, something's happening. We actually, real world time, we have our VPN connections. If you try to log in, I get an alert if it doesn't go correctly. Same way on the firewall. If other things are happening on the firewall, it alerts us in real time. So, the Passport preliminary findings, and why did I put up there preliminary? Because this is a 3-year service. It will be ongoing. The initial phishing campaign, overall district end users were informed and did an overall great job. Port security. Ports protected and VPN is operational. End user protection. 2-factor is in place. Devices are getting updated and verified. That's important. We need to make sure these operating systems are constantly being updated. We need to make sure we're where we need to be. The backup system, it is operational and it is being verified. We run weekly and monthly checks to ensure that's happening, and Passport was able to verify that for us. Conclusion. Couple of things here. The threat is real. If you can see there, education is number 4 targeted. There's different sites you can use. This one came off of Homeland Security, so it just depends. We toggle between 3, 4, or 5, but we definitely are a target. The second thing you can see over there, during a 1-minute snapshot, that is actually a live view of our firewall and who was targeting us at that moment. So it is real. See, Dr. Morello made a comment earlier that the East Coast must not like us because it seemed like, but that's just that moment in time. You'll see it, we get Ukraine, Russia, China, India. It just depends on who's targeting where. But the good thing, our district technology team each and every day works really hard to meet this threat. We are constantly checking. We have security teams weekly and monthly, and depending on, and we also do things to kind of test the system in addition to the passport, because the only way to know where your vulnerabilities are to continually test. With that, are there any questions?
Most of my questions actually you answered, so I just one or two. So as far as the phishing campaigns, what is your current policy if someone receives what they think is a phishing email? Are they supposed to forward it to possibly a security
I'm glad
mailbox?
you asked that. I totally forgot to say this. The day that the phishing campaign kicked off, myself and my technology team, help desk, was inundated with, what is this? Should we click on it? What's going on? And yes, that is the policy. I mean, I'm not talking hundreds. We got thousands of people reaching out, because it was 3, 4 emails, 6,000 emails, and only 328 did some. So everybody else was asking, hey, what's going on? Is something wrong, or is this legitimate? So.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is if you were seeing more attention from that, because that's the sort of activity you want. You don't want people just ignoring emails.
I am so happy folks did that, but at the moment that it was happening, I was like, oh
it's not fun.
time to change my email.
Yeah, having been being the recipient of those as well. Yeah, that's not fun.
The other side of this, and I have to acknowledge this publicly, is our help desk team. They did a wonderful job, but at the end of the day, they were really tired that day.
I do actually have one more. You were talking about the 2-factor authentication. Is it? I mean, because I think through our Gmail accounts, I have it through the app. That's what you guys are pushing, right? Not the phone-based. Okay.
So the big thing, we try to do everything through Google, because Google has done a really good job and has been a security leader. A lot of the districts that you've seen had issues over the past couple years tend to be Microsoft districts.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's all I had. Everything
Sure,
else.
Microsoft was happy to hear you say that.
Again, it's just for what the threat is at that moment in time. The Chromebook does a really good job, and someday I believe that the Microsoft operating system will do something similar. They're just not there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. I don't know if you're going to be able to answer it or not, so this might be way out of your realm. But with the attack in Des Moines, what are we doing different than what Des Moines doing that they were hit and they're still down?
Without going into a lot of information, because a lot of it I don't really know, they are, to my knowledge, a PC network. And I think that would help you draw conclusions.
Thanks.
There's one in Davenport too, actually, a few months
Des Moines
back.
Still down.
Yeah.
So.
It's not great.
John, sorry, go ahead. Is data privacy and cybersecurity a part of the new employee onboarding training, and do all employees get regular training?
I'm not, I do believe it is, but I'm not certain. I don't know if they go through a cyber course. I know that we have done, during the month of October, we do a cyber campaign, and that's normally where we do the training. So even if they were a new employee, by the time October hits, they go through a process.
Okay.
But everyone has to go through the 2 signature sign-on
Correct.
when you get your account.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's automatic. Yeah.
And I guess my just question about any other threats we're seeing in schools that are unique that kids are trying to bypass systems or connecting to things they shouldn't be bringing.
I think you
flash
probably have a
drives.
good knowledge of this. Students are always trying to bypass systems, so we have multiple web filters and we have multiple monitoring tools. But the real malicious stuff is really coming from the outside in. Now, years ago, I used to kind of joke that sometimes maybe we should turn our firewall on ourselves because there was a lot. But when we went to a Chromebook environment, what that did is that allows us to control the apps that are on those devices, and it gives us, it just gives us a better window into what's going on with the device. So for the most part, our students do a really good job. And I would say that we have cyber patriots out there that are learning how to exploit vulnerabilities and protect. And those students actually help my department. They keep us informed. So if something does happen where we've got a vulnerability, they alert the team and through the right process. By the way, that's an amazing group in our district.
And John has done such a good job to ensure that we are protected, which I really appreciate. I know it was like a few years ago that we talked about it and had the board, approve and support the contracts that come through. Even as he was preparing for tonight, because of what happened in another district in our state, he was saying, I'm not going to name certain things because I don't want to give anybody any information that we don't want to, we don't want to release. And then I had a concern about TikTok because we know that it has been banned, from our governor, on any of the state. And John and the team has known that TikTok is not something that's very secure. So we've banned that for at least 2 years now?
We would have banned that over the summer.
Over the summer, okay. So we were ahead of that curve, and that was very positive to have, and to know that our Chromebooks, which are either state or federal funded, we are also aligned there.
Yeah.
So the TikTok, how we first heard about the malicious-ware on it was actually the MS ISAC. It came out in an alert there, and then the OIC confirmed that. So that's where using those forums is extremely helpful.
Okay.
Very good.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate your work, John. Thank you very much, and your team. Good team. In our last presentation this evening, Mr. Wilson is going to introduce our guests this evening. This is our annual report of our 21-22 audit. Mr. Wilson, I'll allow you to introduce our guest and set the stage for us.
I also want to thank John for the security. He was able to still let me operate my Tiger Woods golf game. So. Thank you, Jim. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Justin Hope from Eide Bailly. Eide Bailly, formerly, you may recall, the auditor's firm was Syme Johnson. They merged with Eide Bailly back in July, and I will say I think the audit went pretty well this year, but I'll let you hear from Justin. So.
Thank you for having me this evening. It's two topics tonight that everybody loves, is IT security and audits. So I will see if I have as great of news to share here. My contact information is in the slides. I work for the board here, so if there are questions or things that we want to talk about during the year, please feel free to reach out to me in that way. As Dean mentioned, Justin Hope. I've worked with the district here for a number of years. Know all of the operations and some familiar faces I see on the board and some new faces tonight. As Dean mentioned, we did merge with Eide Bailly. Eide Bailly is one of the top 50 firms in the country. There are 40 offices, about 3,500 people. So it's been an adjustment for us coming from a single office, 100-person firm, but learning the ropes and finding out some new things. So what we're going to go through tonight, we have our draft report to the Board of Education. It's my required communications to you folks charged with governance of the organization, and then also the draft audit report. We are in draft. We're finishing up our internal quality review process to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and so on. So we are still a draft at this point. I do also need to thank Mr. Wilson and his team for all of the work and the preparation that goes into being able to do an audit. Lots of document gathering, schedule building, questions to answer, and all those things. He and his team are fantastic to work with. So the two documents that come out of an audit, there's our required communications, and this is the communication of the significant matters related to the audit, the standards that we follow when we do our audit, and really ultimately what's my responsibility as the auditor in relation to the audit. And so we're planning and performing to obtain reasonable assurance the financials are free from material misstatements. It's not absolute. We don't look at every transaction. We would be here all year and then some trying to do that. So we're making risk assessments, we're making samples, judgments, and looking at things. The ultimate result here, our audit report, we do have an unmodified opinion, which is your best result out of a financial statement audit. We take a look at the accounting practices, whether there were adoption or changes in policies. This year there was a new standard that was effective related to leases. You have several operating leases for buses, this space here that we're in, that come on to the financial statements that previously were only disclosed as a future commitment. Now they're on the what's effectively the balance sheet of the organization. We look at management's judgments and estimates. This is where management has potential ability to influence the results in the financial statements. Your significant estimates being accrued expenses. You are self-funded for your health insurance, and then the pension and OPEB are also significant estimates. Based on the work in those areas, no concerns. We feel the process management has is appropriate, reasonable, and the estimates are also reasonable. We did have 7 audit adjustments. 5 of those 7 were provided by Mr. Wilson and his team as we go through things. They primarily impact the government-wide financial statements, which is sort of a level of detail and data that doesn't always come to the board during the year. It's more of a year-end audit process. The information you got during the year related to the funds, there was a $60,000 negative impact on the capital project funds and $100,000 negative impact on the employee health fund or the internal service fund related to some late invoices or late expenses that got picked up as part of the process. Some other items that we have here as part of this required communication, we look for past audit adjustments. These are things that we find that aren't quite right, but didn't rise to the level to get corrected in the financial statements. We had none of those this year. No disagreements with management. Management was not out consulting with other accountants looking for different opinions or opinion shopping, so to speak. And no difficulties in performing the audit. We were able to see the information we wanted to see, talk to the people we wanted to talk to through that process. We also do not have any reportable matters in accordance with the government auditing standards. The internal controls are appropriate. They look like they're functioning the way they are designed. And then we have some information about new GASB accounting financial reporting standards coming up, one actually related to IT, so it's timely to follow our IT presentation here. Similar to the leases in the sense that you have a lot of subscription-based IT that might be multi-year, and so those things will be showing up in the financials where they presently are not. If we shift gear into the financial statements, as we said a couple of slides ago here, we have an unmodified opinion, or if you look at the financial statement drafts, they fairly present the results and the financial position of the district. There is an emphasis of matter in our opinion for the GASB 87. This is just to alert the reader. This is new from previous years and different. So if you're trying to compare the years, that is different. And then there's some other reporting, some required supplementary information, and then the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, which we'll talk about here in a few slides. The financials are approaching 70 pages long, so there is a lot of good information in there. If you have trouble sleeping, start at the front and work to the back and see how far you get. So you have government-wide financial statements. This is all the activity of the district combined together. You have fund financial statements, breaks up the particular activities into different buckets. A general fund, where most of the activity of the district goes on. Capital project funds, that's fairly self-explanatory. The employee health fund, so on. There's the notes to the financial statements, which gets longer every year. Lisa's added about a good page of fun stuff. So The highlight ones here, 1A describes the entity, what's included in the balances, what's not included. 1B and C talk about the differences between the numbers and all of the funds and how that gets calculated. Note 5 is on leases, talking about the leases that did get recorded this year. 6 with the long-term liabilities, primarily bonds here. 7 is the pension liability, and 8 is the OPEB, or the post-employment health insurance. There's required supplementary information, budget schedules, pension schedules, OPEB schedules, supplementary information, some of the combining fund statements. You have several capital project funds, and this shows the detail, greater detail of what's going on in those funds. And you have your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. This details all the different federal funding streams that come to the district and how that, not necessarily how that was spent, but what categories were spent in the fiscal year. The total federal awards this year, $26.2 million, primarily driven by increases in the ESSER funding and other COVID funding that has come through the nutrition fund. Our job in here is to select what we call major programs and do some testing on the compliance requirements of these programs. Each of these grant has pages and pages and pages of requirements of how can we spend these funds, what sort of reports do we have to file with the funding agencies and those sort of things. And so our major programs this year, we did have 4. ESSER being the largest one, Child Nutrition Cluster, which is a frequent flyer in this major program listing, special education, and also the 21st Century Learning Grant for this year. Those 4, that covered about 86% of the $26 million spent in 22. HYPERS, this is a fun topic every year. It represents a theoretical balance due if everybody was to settle up with HYPERS at the financial statement date. So as of June, the district would have had to settle up for its share of the pension liability for about $1.2 million. Funding status, out to the right of this middle column, the HYPERS is actually just over 100% funded as of June 2022. That's based on a June of 2021 valuation. So if we think back to what the market was doing in June of 2021, everybody was really happy in June of 2021. June of 2022, people were significantly less happy with how things are going. So all of that to say, liability went from, I'm going to jump ahead, it went from $62 million for Council Bluffs' share in 2021 based on the 2020 valuation to a $1.2 million share based on the 2021 valuation. What you're going to see next year in 2023 when we come back here, the slide's going to shoot way back up. Valuation, investment return, not as favorable through June of 2022. So it doesn't represent a hard and fast liability. It's not a check the district has to write, but you will see this yo-yo next year and go back up, unfortunately. I have a handful of slides. We'll move fairly quickly through these. Just some trending analysis, kind of see what's going on with the revenues and expenditures and some other things here in the district. So this is total governmental fund revenue, fairly flat or a stable, about a 5% growth from 17 to 20. From 20 to 22, these big jumps here, this is almost all ESSER dollars, which 23, 20 fiscal 24 is the final time to spend those, so we'll see that start to shift back down in the coming years. Expenditures track revenue. That's how government finance works. Again, here your big growth in expenditures is ESSER. That's the answer to a lot of these questions coming up. Bonded debt, you can see trending down. There was a refunding bond issued in fiscal 2022. Even with all of that, bonded debt continues to drop. Unassigned fund balance, this is didn't work out quite as I wanted it to. This is basically a reserve in the general fund. What dollars do we have that we have not spent yet? That's about $18.5 million in the current year, up from 17.2. So positive trending in that slide. General fund revenue, kind of the same story as before. This is peeling out the capital project funds, peeling out the debt service funds. this is where the fund that the ESSER dollars are recorded in. And so you can see the jump from 20 to 21 to 22. That is almost all ESSER funding. And again, the expenses track the revenues, spend down of those ESSER awards. We'll see those numbers sort of, I would say, normalize in the coming couple of years. General fund balance, this is that reserve slide here. You see the growth in this. Schedule of expenditures of federal awards, you're humming along pretty consistent from 2017 to 2020, and then this is the ESSER impact and the COVID funding impact, approximately $7 million in growth from 20 to 21, and then another $9 million growth here in this current fiscal year. The trend here on the levy, so levy has been consistent over the last 2 budget years. When you mash that up with this slide, which is taxable valuation, you had a $2 billion valuation in 2017 to about 2.4 here in 2022. So even though the levy has remained flat, the total tax revenue has gone up from valuation increases. And then enrollment here, another drop in 2022, about 200 students from 21 to 22. In discussions with Dean this week, implications on state funding, state aid, and that calculation based on enrollment. Working through budget processes and allowable spending and some limits on those sort of things. So something also to be mindful of as we go forward and what we can do with that. With that, happy to answer any questions or swing back through any of those topics.
Any questions from the board? I'm getting off easy tonight, I guess. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
That concludes our reports.
Okay. And that brings us to the end of our agenda, so I guess we are adjourned.
Okay, what's Dean's gone?